Here is a terrifying statistic. In 2004, the NHS was responsible for 28% of public spending, 28%. That is set to rise to an eye-watering 40% in a year's time. Where does this end? Should we go to 45%? 50%? 60%? Why don't we spend every single penny the country has on the NHS? Who needs police, bin collections, schools, welfare, infrastructure or defence? The current crisis, which involves an estimated waiting list of 12 million people, is largely self-inflicted. To be fair, mainly as a result of the government's lockdown policies, but also due to the decision by the management of the NHS to empty wards and to send healthy, asymptomatic doctors and nurses home for weeks on end in the course of the pandemic. The NHS paid private hospitals to stay empty. Surgeons and other frontline workers were unable to perform any procedures for months on end. The backlog was policy. The waiting list, a health decision made by NHS managers and a political decision made by the Department of Health. Let me be very clear. I adore our frontline NHS workers, and what they've been through in the last year and a half has been extraordinarily demanding and at times hellish. We will never repay them for their commitment, their skill, their hard work, their empathy and their love. But the health service itself has huge problems that predicate the pandemic. As with so many institutions, it's been problems that have actually seen themselves exacerbated in the last year and a half. They've got worse during the pandemic. In fact, those problems have been brought to light. With all the money from income tax now spent on the NHS, there will never be enough cash for this organisation, which has, in recent decades, under various governments, gone from being the National Health Service to the National Sickness Service. More money has gone in, but the outcomes have got worse, with spiralling rates of type 2 diabetes, heart disease and cancer. Arguably, the more money that goes in, the worse it gets. Every consultation with a doctor, if you're lucky enough to get one, ends in the prescribing of this medication or that, whether it's for a physical or mental ailment. Our health service is pretty much a dispenser of medications, not a preserver of human health. Keep taking the pills, baby, except the drugs don't work. The NHS has been a sacred cow and politically untouchable for far too long. We've got to endlessly applaud it, apparently. And in the last 18 months, we've had to save it. The people in the NHS are great, but the organisation is now a massive white elephant. And once the boast of the world is now a national liability, which could literally bankrupt the nation. It's time to scrap the diversity officers on 75 grand a year for an organisation that is famously and uniquely diverse. It's time to scrap the senior and middle managers on six-figure salaries. It's time for the organisation culturally to focus on prevention of disease rather than management thereof. NHS GP Dr David Unwin explained to me on this programme that he has reversed the diabetes of scores of his patients by guiding them through changes to their lifestyle and their diet. He cut their carbs, and with that, he cut their medication, their expanded waistlines, their symptoms, and huge amounts of money from his GP practice's budget. So he saved money and he saved lives. What a novel idea. Why isn't every GP doing this? Why is he a minority voice? The NHS is a slave to the toxic food industry that's making us all so sick. And the NHS is in the pocket of big pharmaceutical companies who are making billions not out of our health, but out of our illness. The NHS is complicit in this, whether through arrogance or ignorance, probably both. And the NHS is an unending money pit. It will never have enough cash, so it needs to improve its service, start seeing patients face to face, get over its obsession with COVID, and do what it's paid to do, which is to look after you, the British people, not be saved by them. The NHS is on life support. Money is not the answer because there will never be enough. The NHS must change or die. Now, I'm no fan of Roy Chubby Brown. I've never really understood the whole hat and goggles thing, and much of his material, often nasty and pretty offensive, is not for me. But he's clearly a very talented guy, with a huge following. He's got loads of fans. Bad luck, therefore, that one of the venues hosting his tour, Sheffield City Hall, cancelled his show and refunded tickets. Now, this is an appalling decision. It's an attack not just on free speech, but on the art form of stand-up comedy, something that historically we've been incredibly good at in this country. And stand-up comedy is supposed to be a broad church. You have one-liner comedians, clean comedians, dirty comedians, political comedians, silly comics, Andrew comics, happy comics. It takes all sorts. The hilarious storytelling ramblings of Billy Connolly and the punchy one-liners of Bob Monkhouse. As with all aspects of cancel culture, this decision is riddled with inconsistencies and hypocrisy. Seemingly, Roy Chubby Brown is a bit too naughty for the good people of Sheffield. But will they be cancelling the shows of Jimmy Carr and Frankie Boyle? Now, full disclosure, those two comedians are among my favourites. Fantastic gag writers, incredible performers. I'm a fan. But they have, respectively, told jokes about sexual assault and children with Down syndrome. So if Roy Chubby Brown is triggering and offensive or even dangerous, do you not think that gags about kids with Down syndrome having bad haircuts are problematic? Do you not think that jokes about gang rape are a tad problematic too? In the end, the audience should decide what is acceptable, not the modern-day censors who would happily kill all art. Unless they're breaking the law, all comedians should be free to perform their work and should be allowed to actually let the audience make a judgment, and market forces should decide. There's space for Roy, Jimmy and Frankie too. Comedy is under attack, and there are comedians out there now afraid to tell a joke for fear of their career and for fear of the consequences. And that's not a very funny place to be. If you cancel Roy Chubby Brown and other people that don't fit the prescribed woke narrative, whilst allowing other comics to be as offensive as you like, you're not cancelling just one comedian, you're cancelling comedy altogether. And the result will be a joyless dystopia in which we're not allowed to mock or lampoon anything. Comedy is the ultimate weather vane of a free society. And if you lose a plurality of comedic voices, the implications for our society are profound. And that is no laughing matter. Meanwhile, another week, another attack on Winston Churchill, this time from within, as the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust renamed itself the Churchill Fellowship and removed images of the ex-PM from its website. And indeed, they took his name, they removed his face. Now, we're told the Churchill family are happy with this and that the decision is not an attempt to erase the memory of this wartime leader. Except eliminating his Christian name from the charity's title and taking his face off their website surely does exactly that. Consciously or unconsciously, it's an apology for a man who, during the Second World War, faced off tyranny and rescued the free world. His full name should be all over that branding, and so should his image. Churchill was a complex man, and you cannot evaluate the legacy of any politician from 100 years ago without placing them in the context of their time. But that's what campaigners now want to do. It's important for historians and indeed school teachers to look at the grey area of Churchill's time in power, both as a military leader, Home Secretary and ultimately Prime Minister. He said wrong things. He did wrong things. He made profound mistakes, much of which are owing to the period of history in which he lived. But defeating Hitler, one of the worst monsters of human history, must surely define his legacy. If we're weighing up his contribution to humanity, I'll take that. The Third Reich gathered millions of Jewish people and murdered them in gas chambers. They were tortured, experimented upon and enslaved. Gold was prized from their mouths, as well as myriad other horrors that I just can't bring myself to tell you about, and that you doubtless know anyway. Defeating the evil of Nazism is surely the greatest triumph of any British leader in history. In my book, Churchill is a hero. The freedom we enjoy today ironically, to debate his legacy, is one for which we have him to thank. After another bizarre week in which we have debated the reputation of a man whose leadership, vision, creativity, hard work and courage saw the defeat of fascism, I'm delighted to use this programme and this platform of GB News to officially uncancel Winston Churchill. And in tribute to this flawed, complex, sometimes wrong, but ultimately truly great Britain, we are dedicating this show to him. He's all over the show tonight, folks. His face and his full name and his legacy. So, to Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, the man who saved Britain, who saved the West, and who saved the world, we celebrate you and we salute you.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.